I have been amassing data about this site for over 10 years. Ever since technically 2010, when the building that was on this site actually caught fire and was condemned by the city. As soon as it exposed the platforms in which the building was built on, I had suggested to some people in the city that Benedict Arnold's house would be on this site. They got me permission. It turned out that it was Betsy Henley Cohn who gave the permission to do it. She owned the site. And I explored one portion of the site here. And what I had done in the years before that building was destroyed was put together all the maps that I had from the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s, and especially the Beers map of 1888 and the Sanborn maps of 1921, which define where structures were in that period of time. Those insurance maps are very valuable today for the city when they're looking for infrastructure from the industrial age. So we had early maps of colonial homes on this site, and then we had the Sanborn maps and the Beers maps that would come together and kind of give an idea of layers of time. Now add Google Earth and add drones. And as soon as I put those components in, I was able to basically zero in on the back wall of Benedict Arnold's house exactly where it was. And so, getting permission to the site before we put the fence in here, I did a test dig and I nailed the wall, the back wall. I did do a little digging around that wall to kind of determine its size and where it would go. Some of it, unfortunately, will go here to the UI substation next door. But we did not know how far the property goes now on the other side. So we did a lot of data research about the house when Arnold lived here. Then when Arnold left for the war, he only came back to New Haven one time. My friend Laura Macaluso has done extensive studies about Benedict Arnold and his house and his time here in New Haven. And so she's written all kinds of material about that. So she was a fabulous source to help us determine what kind of things happened at the house on that site. Now, when Arnold went to war and he came back, then he turned traitor, as we all know, on George Washington. The house was sold a couple times, and eventually Noah Webster purchased the house. We determined around 1804, 1805, and he penned the first American dictionary in the front parlor of Benedict Arnold's house in 1806. So we have two very famous figures in American history that have lived on this site. Now, the house eventually goes to some more people, and then a lumber yard buys the house. And they slowly let the house decay, and eventually they turn it into basically a shed for lumber. They utilize the land around the house for piles of lumber. Now that's a really important thing here, because that means nothing was penetrating into the earth around this house since the inhabitants lived in the house. It's a very valuable site in New Haven. Nothing has disturbed it. Maybe some modern things that came through for piping and sewage, but for the most part, no cellars were ever dug, no foundations around the house. Now, the house eventually decays, and what we have determined from many, many news articles of the period, that around 1902, the house is torn down. Now, they say if George Washington lived in the house, they wouldn't have torn it down. It would have been a very important piece of American history, but Arnold was the scoundrel of the Revolution, so they didn't really care much about it. Now, we also know today Arnold was a merchant in town. He was an apothecary, a bookseller. He was a smuggler. We know he was a smuggler. Articles in the early days determined that there was a tunnel entrance about 4 feet high in the basement somewhere that led out to the wharf where 3 of his sloops were docked. So a lot of really interesting action happened on this land. The lumber yard eventually tears down the house, and the house actually is sold in pieces as lumber. Eventually, the lumberyard sells the property and it becomes a more modern building. And that was the building that was torn down in 2010. That building became the Acme Tile Company, which we have aerial photographs from that structure from the 1930s to the 1950s. Some of them were given to me by my friend Tony Grigo, who's a retired police sergeant who is the New Haven police historian. And so Tony has also done extensive research about Arnold and the house site. So we now have a lot of data about this house. But what I have determined now is that the very parking lot of the high school and the community could possess dig sites from the house when the inhabitants lived there. And what's most vital about this site is that nothing disturbed this dirt through those periods of time. So privies could be here, anything else that was dug in the ground could be dropped here.
Robert, we have someone that looks like he's mowing the lawn, but it's obviously not a lawnmower. Can you tell me what's going on with this gentleman who is passing over the surface of this parking lot?
Yes, this is David Leslie. His company does explorations of archeological sites. He is an expert and an archaeologist in his field. He is now running a ground penetrating radar in a more detailed sense than the one we did previous on the site to determine what was under here. He is determining if there are any features under this ground. He will be able to read below the asphalt very clearly where there could be potential dig sites for archaeological research. One of my other hopes is that we can reel in some of the professors over at Southern Connecticut University so they can bring some of their students in and conduct a real archaeological dig on this site.
Tell me also about the implications for public schools here in New Haven and the curriculum that you're developing around this site.
Well, Betsy Henley Cohn owned the site. When we bought the building, when Lost in New Haven, the nonprofit museum that it is today, purchased the structure on 80 Hamilton, it turns out that we bought it from Betsy Henley Cohn. And it turns out that Betsy also owned the Benedict Arnold site. We asked if Betsy would be kind enough to donate the site to Lost in New Haven, and she did. And now it has become a permanent archaeological site for the city of New Haven. And that is where the real value comes in for the school systems. What I want to happen on this site is the school systems like the high school in the community, or even Beecher School, which is the museum school that I went to as a young person in Westville area. We want this site to be an educational site. And so anything we find here, I would like to build an on-site museum out of a 40-foot storage box. And I would like young people to learn about the city and what's below it. We have a very unique city, New Haven. We are the first planned city in America. That means that 9 squares is exactly the same as it was when John Brockett laid it out in 1641. Now, we landed in 1638, but it took a while to survey that land. Now, what's most important about that fact is when we tee up those 9 squares to Google Earth today, we can bring those maps all together. It's the most unique thing in America. Now, we will be able to bring schools in here and explore the different entities that could be below, the different stories of the inhabitants, what the wharf was like, what life was like in New Haven through different periods of time. And here we can do it not being rushed, and we can actually bring kids in safely into a parking lot that's already a high school. So it's the perfect formula for education here in New Haven.
Thank you, Robert Greenberg, founder of Lost in New Haven, a museum of sorts.
It is a museum, more of a cabinet of curiosities, and I would like to add what we are going to do for tourism in New Haven is epic, because now with all the new development going on in New Haven, the new train station and State Street, and over here in Fear Street that you're seeing right behind us, we're bringing lots more people. The mayor is bringing in a lot of people in the city. This will become a great tourism hub where people can go from here to get our pizzas on Webster Street and then go visit Lost in New Haven at 80 Hamilton Street.